Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Hi, Dr. Ruben. Good morning.
always happy, always in a good mood.
Always. You know, I'm a morning person, so this part of the day really you get the best version of me. Come 4 p.m., the eyelids start to get a bit heavy. Good morning to you all. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Rotis.
Good morning. Good to have you.
All righty. Thank you. Let me tell you about what's happening around the world. Now, Indian billionaire businessman Gautam Adani, the chairman of the Adani Group conglomerate, and 7 other senior business executives have been indicted in New York on bribery charges. That's after they allegedly promised more than $250 million in bribes to Indian government officials to secure solar energy contracts. These bribes are also believed to be used to lie to US investors and banks to raise billions of dollars. Now, worth more than $85 billion, Adani is Asia's second richest person behind countryman Mukesh Ambani, according to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index. Moving on to the Middle East, and the State Department has defended the US veto of a UN Security Council resolution on a Gaza ceasefire. The US says while the resolution calls for the release of hostages, what it doesn't do is link the release of hostages to an immediate unconditional ceasefire. Its fellow members, all of whom voted for the resolution, roundly criticized the United States for blocking the measure put forward by the Council's 10 elected members. Meanwhile, Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has demanded a complete ceasefire and protection of Lebanon's sovereignty in any deal with Israel ahead of US envoy Amos Hochstein's planned meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And finally, the gold-capped tooth of Patrice Lumumba, the Democratic Republic of Congo's independence hero, is safe and has not been stolen. That's according to his daughter, Juliana. Now, Congolese authorities say they are investigating the vandalism this week of a mausoleum where the first democratically elected prime minister's remains were kept. His family says that previous concerns over the security of the site had prompted the family to move that tooth previously to a more secure location. Now, the remains of Patrice Lumumba were returned from Belgium to the Democratic Republic of Congo just 2 years ago in 2022. The Belgian court had confiscated the tooth from the daughter of Gerard Soete, a Belgian agent involved in his assassination. Lumumba was executed by local soldiers in the presence of Belgian officers in the separatist Katanga region back in 1961, just months after Congo's independence from Belgium. Those are your well-briefed stories. Dr. Ruben, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them.
Oh, you want to start with?
Yes!
Okay, Patrice Lumumba was a symbol of change and hope in his country.
Always.
And then his assassination was part of the, the tragic points about imperialism.
Yes.
So it's not about his golden tooth being removed. It was about the future of a country that had great hopes being destroyed in the process. And that was a dark spot for Africa, not just for the Democratic Republic of Congo. That a man who was committed to the liberation of his country, committed to democracy, representative rule in his country, had to be treated so badly. The possibilities that could have been represented by Patrice Lumumba were cut short. And this is part of the legacy of colonialism and of the experience of, the tragedy that Africa suffered. That's said about that. Now, Gautam Adani, the second richest man in Asia, and others, 7 others, I think, have now been indicted in the New York Federal High Court for offenses relating to fraud, massive bribery, committed in the process of getting American companies to invest in India. Not one of the indicted persons are in America, but this has to do with the Federal Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Well, how that will play out will remain to be seen, but the basic point, the basic commonsensical point, is how when companies in other places commit crimes in other countries, they can be asked to account for it. Gautam Adani is worth about $85 billion dollars. You recall that in 2023, Hindenburg Research had in fact said this was a con artist, parading himself as one of the richest men in the world. Well, I would say that for this particular issue, we'll be watching.
Yes.
We'll try to see how it plays out.
Indeed. Thank
now,
you.
you brought up another story.
A resolution in the United Nations.
The U.S. saying, look, they do not believe that the resolution by 10 members of the 15-member Permanent Council will go enough, because they do not think that unconditional release will lead to the release of hostages. Well, in this regard, the United States was standing alone, the same way that Russia stood alone in the case involving Sudan, the crisis in Sudan. Again, this draws our attention to issues about the democratization of the Security Council. The U.S. is saying that, look, if you have to release people, hostages, there must be no conditions. Now, out of all these hostages, 17 Americans are also involved. And Robert Wood, Deputy Representative to the United Nations Permanent Security Council, was saying this is not a good deal for the United States, and the United States has been, resolute in saying this is what we want. Now, if there are 15 members on that UN Security Council, I think the 10 members who have pushed this issue forward should also have a voice.
Agreed.
Because as I said yesterday, 1945 is not 2024. But that's the situation we have, the veto power of one of the 5 permanent members. Israel has responded to say, we are not even interested in whatever you are saying at the UN Security Council. Qatar has had to withdraw from mediating the negotiations because Qatar says, look, this is the parties involved don't even want to talk. Definitely. It's a question about global peace, and the Palestinian authorities have naturally condemned Israel.
Thank you, Dr. Rubin. Dimba, I love your thoughts on the word brief.
All right, very quickly. Adani, oh my goodness me. When I heard the news, the first thing I did is I ran to Kenyan Twitter because I knew Kenyans would celebrate at this moment. Why are they celebrating? Because they feel Adani and the Adani group have captured their state. There was a deal that was exposed recently concerning the purchase, the takeover of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi. There's also another deal concerning Ketraco, which is the energy provider in Kenya. There's a number of questionable deals that the Adani Group has been involved in Kenya, which Kenyans have repeatedly highlighted as being corrupt deals. And, I was just going through Twitter now. I see they've even brought up a video, an old, not even an old video, I think it was just last month, where the Kenyan president was saying the Adani Group is a company of good repute. They are honest people. So Kenyans are now saying, well, look at this. And I believe this morning people have started calling for William Ruto's resignation yet again. So it doesn't rain for the man. In pause, concerning this. So I'm keeping my eyes on how this fallout, which, ultimately it's an Indian company and the indictment is coming from the United States, but the impact on Kenya is massive. And could I just say, when the Prime Minister of India came, I actually went through his list to check if any representative of the Adani Group was there, because I know that of course, nobody is guilty until, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Indeed. But I wanted to see whether this Adani Group was now, looking at Nigeria. But no, they were not. They were not there. They were not there. But I think Kenyans are definitely feeling vindicated this morning.
Thank you, Bimbai.
Yeah, no, on Adani, the shares fell. I have a chart to put it up during the business segment. But Adani Entertainment Limited down about 21%. Green Energy Limited 17%. Double-digit drops for the shares on the companies and the Nifties even there. In fact, Asian stocks across the board are down. A lot of people are asking why this is coming out now. And the interesting point to note is that the lawyer who is behind this is a Biden appointee. they have to submit resignation letters to the Department of Justice before Trump comes in, because he's going to sweep them all out. And so they're leaving it up to the Trump administration to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to push forward with the indictment or not, because an arrest warrant has been put out for Gautam Adani. Also, there was a $600 million bond that the company was going to issue on the markets. They've pulled that now as a result of this indictment. So the thing is going to, I mean, they've put it out there, they've let everybody know that this indictment is out there, but the question now is whether the Trump administration pushes forward with it or drops it. Yeah.
All righty, well, thank you all for your comments on the World Brief. Let's move on to the newspaper headlines across the globe. And of course, we begin here in Nigeria with This Day newspaper. This Day leads with heightened cries for help from the Arewa Consultative Forum, which has advised President Tinubu that his economic conditions were insensitive to the realities faced by northern communities. Specifically, he says that livelihoods in northern Nigeria are dependent on micro activities, and chronic food insecurity is especially harsh. To the New Telegraph now, which in addition to leading with drastic concerns that people may not be able to reap the benefits of reforms tracking insecurity in the north, parents of the 88 Nigerian students stranded in Cyprus have called on the Zamfara state government to address their concerns following the non-payment of registration, tuition and student allowances amounting to 1 billion naira. On the front page of The Guardian this morning is a deep dive on how our weakened naira has stalled federal and state projects and spiked costs by 45%. Another story that caught my eye on the front page of The Guardian is a bill to modify the constitution and enable voting from the diaspora, which passed its second reading in the House of Representatives. Nigerians in the diaspora are believed to contribute $20 million to the economy and should have a say in who becomes president during general elections. The Daily Trust reports on the House of Representatives calling for a minimum of 500 billion naira recapitalization threshold for the 11 distribution companies or discos in the country if they must remain in business. The call is coming amidst concerns that a number of the distribution companies in the country have low financial capacity to make the necessary investments in power infrastructure for efficient service delivery. The Tribune has a window story that shares the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission's warning over substandard and unregistered sugar in the markets. The FCCPC says the low-quality sugar, primarily smuggled from Brazil, poses significant health risks to consumers and undermines the integrity of the country's local sugar industry. Finally, almost like the president heard your comments yesterday, Vimbai, because in the front page of The Punch, President Tinubu has named his envoys as ministry post consular officers to Spain, Malaysia and Brazil, amongst other countries, as concerns over the state of Nigeria's missions abroad continue to heighten. Moving on to foreign papers, to Kenya now, and the Daily Nation's headline this morning refers to the country as an abductor's playground, specifically looking at the abduction in Nairobi and subsequent transfer to Kampala of Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who's raised fears that Kenya is no longer a safe haven for those fleeing political persecution. UK papers this morning, including the Daily Telegraph, feature Ukraine firing UK missiles at Russian targets for the first time. But as that paper reports, this is happening while £500 million is cut from defence spending. And The Sun also features pictures from One Direction bandmates and Cheryl Tweedy. I think her last name is Tweedy. You know, she changes it so often, but they have all joined many in the music industry at the funeral of Liam Payne, who is the father of her son. Liam Payne, as we know, died in Argentina last month. Those are your newspaper headlines. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, well, if I can make additional comments, and it will be very brief. The U.S. vetoing the resolution about unconditional release, immediate, they also said, the 10 non-permanent members emboldens Israel. And Israel has just responded by saying it will go all out to crush Gaza. Now, that again is unfortunate for world peace. The second major point in the British papers, most of the British papers, are talking about now storm shadows.
Yes.
The 115 miles range, long-range missiles belonging to the UK now being used. This is the second attack within 1 week. First, it was the US attackments, ATACMS, being used. Now, within less than 1 week, you have storm shadows owned by the British being used. Now, this directly intensifies British involvement in the crisis, and we have to draw attention to how Russia says it has amended its nuclear doctrine. So you may have attacks on assets belonging to the allies, the US and its allies, and also on NATO strategic solutions. Sure. And yesterday I quoted Medvedev, who said that, look, this looks like World War III. This is a major problem for the world, as the crisis between Russia and Ukraine after 1,000 days intensifies. If there's any other issues on the international scene, is the prosecutors of Trump saying that, well, there should be an extension beyond November 26 for his sentencing to December 9, and his own counsel, there's no plural when you use the word counsel, saying that, look, this matter should be dismissed.
Okay, very quickly to the punch. Since we're gonna keep pushing the issue of Nigeria's envoys internationally. So fine, they've sent consular officers, but what really is the seniority of a consul officer in the bigger scheme of things? I mean, these are people who generally approve visas and, handle sort of the administrative work of the embassy. They're still not the high-level ambassadors that we need. I was just reading that Punch report, and they're saying that initially they'd been told that the issue was a funding issue, but now there's just silence, so they don't really know what's coming. So hopefully now that consul officers are going out there, maybe they'll lay the foundation for whatever administrative work needs to happen, and then from there we'll now get an ambassadorial list. Excuse me. Then the other story that interested me was the diaspora voting, which I think is massive. It would be such a big win. However, we always talk about the law of unintended consequences, which is that you can have perfect policies, but implementation can destroy those policies. I hope we're ready, because with the concerns we have over BVAS, over IREV, I'm a little bit anxious about what sort of control mechanism will exist for these votes coming from all around the world, and how will we verify the authenticity. It's almost like when Donald Trump was saying no to mail voting, because he's like, it's too easy to rig. So yes, diaspora must vote, but how are we going to control it?
Yeah, well, it's controlling the embassies. You will go to the
ones
consulate.
that don't have ambassadors.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Not the ambassador himself, him or herself, doesn't have to be the one to conduct the voting. We've seen diaspora Kenyans are able to vote. Diaspora South Africans are able to vote. They don't have two heads. You go to the embassy, the officials there will make sure that the vote is cast. They count them, and then it's uploaded. It's an excellent point. Nigerians send billions of dollars from diaspora Nigerians back home, and they should be allowed to vote and choose who their next leaders are. I mean, you can't be setting up all these, forums of investment to attract it. Our recent $500 million bond that we just raised was also targeting diaspora Nigerians to invest in that bond in order to shore up the FX reserves of the nation. So if you're depending on them partially to show up your FX reserves and you need them to prop up your economy, you should allow them to vote as well. I've been on Power and I'm still not getting off it. I'm not sure if it was the Daily Trust or which headline it was that said that discos need about 500 billion or so to shore up their capital. I tell people again, this is the reason why subsidies don't work. If you allow market forces to, for the value chain, to allow profitability to go where it's supposed to for these entities, they won't fall into the shortfall that they are right now. So again, the presidency has gotten it right, partially removing them, passing an electricity act to decentralize this thing down to the states. We just have to hope that things work out. But we need meters. This meter issue, you will not be able to collect money that you owe unless you can charge people properly for the amount of power that they use. So we need to really fix our power issue in Nigeria.
Tough terrain, though.
It's tough. It's really tough terrain.
People are in Bandi in Akoka, and they are saying that they get electricity for just 2 hours in a day, instead of the 20 to 24 hours that they have been promised. So there's insincerity in policy implementation. That's the big problem. apart from the infrastructure issues that we have.
It is. Oh.
But I get your point. I mean,
Adefemi,
This has
thank
been a
you so
wonderful
much.
segment, I have to
Yes,
say.
we've been able to get through it all. Thank you so much, Adefemi.
Always a pleasure.
It was great having you.